Good evening, everyone. Thanks for stopping in today. My name is Stephanie Petch, and I am here to, actually, I'm just going to make sure that we've got everything going here. Just let me check my screens. Connor, will you just give me the yes, we're good, or let's wait a little bit until we get everyone logged in? And oh, here we go. We've got 46 participants in here.
Yep, they're all filing through.
Okay, great. So we're just gonna go, I'm just gonna start in just a couple minutes, but I wanna introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Petch. I am an assistant director in the Office of Financial Aid. I see that there are already people using the chat function on this Zoom call. If you have questions, we would actually appreciate if you could use the Q&A function on the chat on the bar up there instead of the chat. That way, I've got people on the back end who are answering all the questions. My advisors are behind the scenes, and they will read your questions and answer them properly. So again, if you have questions, please use the Q&A function on the toolbar. That way, we only have to look in one spot and answer your questions that way. As I mentioned, I do have all of my advisors that are on the back end. So I just want to say I appreciate you guys for coming in after hours and working on this with us to get through. So this webinar today, I have six or seven slides about the FAFSA. So this is called FAFSA 101. And what really it is basic information about the FAFSA. We're going to go over what the FAFSA is, why you might want to fill it out, what you can get from filling out the FAFSA, and the information that needs to go on the FAFSA, and any little hints that we have that might make the process a little bit easier. And then our contact information. So I'm guessing 30 to 40 minutes. I don't want it to be too overwhelming because financial aid, we tend to give a lot of information. So this is just the first of the series, just about the FAFSA, basically the who, what, where, when, why, how. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So here we go. What is the FAFSA? The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is the application that the family needs to fill out to be considered for federal financial aid. You submit it once a year, and it's available beginning October 1st, which is Friday, right? And that's the first day you can fill it out. Don't try and fill it out on Thursday and, think you're gonna get it in earlier. That's not gonna happen. And so Friday is the first day you can fill it out. And this is for students who are current seniors in high school or currently enrolled in college. So if you're a junior in high school right now, please don't do the FAFSA yet. It's really for seniors, current seniors, and those who are currently in college. So the students and the parents have sections that they fill out separately. So with the FAFSA, there's a student section, and then there's also a parent section. So just make sure that when you go into the application, you're really paying attention to whether they say student or parent to make sure that you're putting the correct information in. Now, at Eastern, we strongly urge and encourage every family to file a FAFSA. What we tend to get a lot is a family that says, well, I'm not going to file the FAFSA because I'm not going to qualify for anything. One thing that we kind of like to nip in the bud is that you may not qualify for free financial aid, but the federal government offers low interest rate loans to the students and the parents. So, and you would only be eligible for those if you file the FAFSA. So I'm just gonna say, I currently, and a lot of our staff too that are on the back end, we currently have kids in college. I fill out the FAFSA every year, and I have my son borrow his loans from the federal government so that maybe it'll make him more responsible and make him go to class more often because he knows he's borrowing money that he's going to have to pay back. Obviously, that's a family choice and a family decision, but you won't know what you qualify for if you don't fill out the FAFSA. So again, it's the free application for federal student aid. It's the only application that you need to be considered for federal financial aid. You submit it once a year, beginning on Friday. We always encourage the sooner the better. Make sure that you know that there's a student section and a parent section. And again, we strongly encourage everyone to file the FAFSA. So again, why should I file a FAFSA? It's the only way you're going to know if you're eligible for the free money. If you don't file the FAFSA, well, you're for sure not going to get any free money from the federal government. But everyone will qualify for low interest loans and work study if they have the need. So you won't know if you qualify for that if you don't fill out the FAFSA. One little thing that we like to point out for Eastern specifically is that we have a scholarship called the Education First Opportunity Scholarship, or what we call the EFOS. You will not know if you qualify for EFOS unless you have the FAFSA filled out. And that EFOS through Eastern, if you haven't heard about any of our scholarships, between the Pell Grant and the EFOS award, that covers your cost for tuition. So the EFOS award is a sought after scholarship. And again, you won't know if you qualify if you don't have a FAFSA on file. So that is, if you've been offered an Emerald Award, you don't have to have a FAFSA on file for the Emerald, but again, we always encourage that you fill it out. We also use the FAFSA to determine whether or not a family is eligible for other need-based aid at the university. So, if we have some emergency money, like we've received some money from the federal government with the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund or the HERF funds. If you didn't have a FAFSA on file, you weren't even considered for those funds. So we use the FAFSA also for other things, other university money that we want to be able to give to families. You also have to have a FAFSA on file to be considered for the state of Michigan awards. So the Michigan Competitive Awards, the Michigan TIP program, you have to have a FAFSA on file to be considered for those. So if you don't file a FAFSA, there are several awards that you could miss out on as a family. So that's why we always, strongly encourage. I just want to say again, if you have questions, please use the Q&A function and not the chat bar. So submit your questions to the Q&A and I'll make sure that my advisors that will ensure that the advisors can answer your questions. So a lot of times we get questions like, okay, you've told me, I get it. You want me to file the FAFSA. You're strongly encouraging it. I get it. I don't need to hear it anymore. But what do I have to fill out on the FAFSA? What information are you requesting that I have to put on the FAFSA? And sometimes parents are a little leery because they don't like putting their personal information on things. And I get it because there's a lot of, identity theft and things like that. And can I say 100% that the information is secure? I can't. It's through the federal government's website. So it is probably a little bit more secure than some, but as in everything, I would like to give a 100% assurance that nothing will happen, but I think like a 99.99% chance is pretty fair. So the information that you do submit, it goes right to the federal government, which most of the time they have your information anyways that you are submitting, just in various other locations. But you're going to put like your basic information for the student and parent. So of course, you're going to list your name, date of birth, social security number. They're going to ask for household information, not the name of people in the household, but they're going to ask for numbers. So, okay, how many people do you have living in your household? And how many of those students that are living in the household are going to be attending college? So that's the type of household information. They're going to ask for adjusted gross income and wages for the student and parents. They're going to ask the student what other colleges or universities they're interested in attending. And that way that information that you're putting on the FAFSA gets sent to those proper colleges. One thing that we want to make sure that it doesn't happen too often, but it happens enough to where we just feel like there needs to be a reminder with the parents and student information. When you're putting your social security numbers in, one, please double check to make sure it's the proper social security number. And then also make sure that you're using the last name. So like make sure that your last name is the same last name that the Social Security Administration has for you. So, you know, sometimes in instances, a parent gets remarried or married and they don't change their name with the Social Security Administration, or they haven't done that yet. You want to make sure that you use the last name that the Social Security Administration has on file for you, which could be different than the last name that you're currently going by. Or say sometimes a student may unofficially get adopted by a step parent, and maybe they just start using that step parent's last name, but really the Social Security Administration has a different name. Use the last name that the Social Security Administration has. So this is kind of like the biggest holdup, the biggest, I think, the biggest reason why some people don't want to fill out the FAFSA is that they say, I don't want the government having all of my information. You know, that's, if you want to borrow from the federal government, or if you want any money from the federal government or from the state, this is just something that you have to do. So there really isn't a way around it. Again, so this one is, what will it get me? So we've talked a little bit about the free money. So the free money that we're talking about is a Pell Grant and a Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. We're not really going to go into depth about these programs. Just know that the Pell and the SEOG is free money. We're also going to go into, you're also going to be considered for federal loans, which is the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan program. Those are the loans that the student borrows. Now, those are two different, it's the same loan program, but two different loans. The subsidized loan is the loan that the government pays the interest on while the student is enrolled in school, and the unsubsidized does accrue interest while the student is enrolled in school. The next webinar that we have, the FAFSA What's Next, we'll go more into depth about those loan programs and, you know, the positives, why you may choose one over another. The other loan program that you're going to be considered for if you file a FAFSA is the Direct Plus loan. That's the loan that the parent borrows. And again, you have to have the FAFSA on file and to be considered for that loan. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. The next loan program is, or the next program is the Federal Work Study. This is not a loan program, and it's not free money. It's a program that the student actually gets a job on campus, and their earnings from that job come out of the Federal Work Study program. You do have to have need to be considered for federal work study. But it's just another program through the federal government. Basically, it's the federal government is paying the student to work on campus. Again, we'll go over that information more in the second webinar. Other aid that you could be eligible for if we have a FAFSA on file is, I've talked a little bit about it, but the Education First Opportunity Scholarship, the EFOS. If we have any EMU emergency grants, we're going to have a FAFSA on file to be to even consider the student for any emergency grant. The Michigan Competitive Scholarship and the Michigan Tuition Incentive Program. Those are just the Michigan Competitive and the TIP program, Tuition Incentive Program, are just two of the popular programs that the state of Michigan offers to students. They have other programs as well, and you can go to the michigan.gov website and look at their programs, but those are the two most popular ones. You do have to have a FAFSA on file for those. So we've gone over what the form is, why you should, really want to fill out the form, the types of aid that you're going to be considered eligible for. Now we're going to talk about how do you complete the form. So it is an online process, as is mostly everything these days. They do have one website, the studentaid.gov website. I have it listed right here on this slide. Once you get to that website, up top, there are some options. If you click on apply for aid, complete the FAFSA form, a page will come up and you just click the start here button. And that will basically, one of the first questions it asks, are you a parent filing the FAFSA or are you a student filing the FAFSA? So you click which one ever pertains to you and start the process. And again, this is beginning on Friday. One thing you do need to be prepared for when you file the FAFSA is that you have to be prepared to create what they call an FSA ID. Basically, that's your signature on the FAFSA. The student has to have an FSA ID and the parent filing the FAFSA has to have an FSA ID. So two separate FSA IDs, and that's what's going to be used, again, as your signature on the FAFSA. One thing that I want to talk a little bit about here, and normally we cover this in like our high school night presentations, but I feel like it might be important in this group setting. Sometimes we get the question of, okay, well, I'm divorced. Whose information goes on the FAFSA? Really, it's this whomever the student lives with 51% of the time is the parental information that is supposed to go on the FAFSA. If you say, well, everything is split even 50-50 down the line, we split costs, we split time at the household. So, the student lives equally with both of us, then really it's up to you as a family. I mean, if everything is equal, then you have to choose one. Now, here's where the tricky part can come into play. If you are divorced and the student, your child, is living with you 90% of the time, and you are remarried, it is your information and your spouse's information that goes on the FAFSA. You cannot omit your spouse's information, even if they're not the parent of the biological parent of the student that is applying for financial aid. So I don't want this to be, a really confusing topic or anything like that. It goes by household information. So if the child is with you, the majority of the time, it's your information and your spouse's information. If you're not remarried or you've never been married, it's just your information, your income information on the FAFSA and the student's information. So, but I do want to make sure that you're aware, even if it's not the student's biological parent, but they're in the household, they do have to be on the FAFSA, or their information has to be on the FAFSA, income information. Oh, and while we're here, because I talked a little bit about the FSA ID, only one parent needs to create an FSA ID. So when I do my son's FAFSA, I'm the one who has the FSA ID. My husband doesn't really have anything to do with it, but his information goes on the FAFSA, of course, but I'm the only one who has that FSA ID. That FSA ID is good for, I believe, 18 months. So really, if you're filing the FAFSA every year, you shouldn't have to renew, but make sure you write down the username, the password, your question, your hints. So make sure you write all of that stuff down and keep it in a safe place. I would probably have your student write their information down too, and you keep that in a safe place. Because I've seen how my son keeps things in safe places, and I feel like it's a little bit better with me. So just a little hint. Some other hints that we have for you, because the FAFSA is available beginning Friday, that's coming up fast, I always try to encourage you to go through the FAFSA first on your own. If you are stuck, they do have some like tips. If you hover over, those little info buttons, if you hover over those buttons, they'll have some tips that pop up for you to help you if you're stuck on a certain question. But if you really can't get through it, go ahead and save the information and contact any financial aid office. They'll be able to help you. Our contact information is going to be on the last page. But you can reach out to any financial aid office and they'll be able to help you. Or if your high school is having a FAFSA filing event, you can either drop in if it's a webinar, or go in person to try and get some additional help. But if you have questions and you can't figure it out on your own, save everything and contact us at that point. Sometimes in the past, I've heard a lot of families say, oh, the FAFSA form, oh, it's so hard. It's so confusing. I dread it all the time. I am telling you, when we go to high schools and do in-person FAFSA filing nights, sometimes it takes 5 minutes for a family to fill out the FAFSA. Sometimes it takes about 20 minutes. They have really streamlined the process. They've taken out questions that you really don't need to answer based on your answers to previous questions. So try it on your own first. Don't be afraid of it. Honestly, when I did it, the most confusing part or the most frustrating part for us was just the FSA ID. That was the only thing that we got hung up on, and it ended up working fine. So try it on your own. Don't believe the hype that it's, this impossible process and it's so, clear out 2 hours of your schedule. You don't need to do that. Make sure that you are reading every question carefully. Again, paying particular attention to whether it's asking for student information or parent information. A lot of times we do see FAFSAs where the parent income, adjusted gross income, may be, 80,000. And then we look at the student side and the student AGI is 80,000 as well. Everything kind of matches. The student information matches exactly the parent information. And that's because they weren't reading when they filed the FAFSA, they weren't identifying, okay, this is the student section and this is the parent section. So just make sure that make sure you pay attention to that. If you do have the option to use the IRS data retrieval when you file the FAFSA, I would strongly suggest that you use it. This is when you file your taxes, when it asks for the tax income information, it will ask if you meet these certain criteria. If you meet this certain criteria, you can be directed to go into the IRS database retrieval, and what will happen is the IRS will transfer that income information that the FAFSA is asking for. They will transfer it right into the FAFSA. So you don't have to have any keying errors. There's like no doubt where this information is coming from. And on our side, we in the financial aid office see that you've transferred that information over from the IRS database. And that means we don't question it. There's no need for us to question it. If you transferred it from the IRS database, we don't need to ask if you get selected for verification. We don't need to ask for tax transcripts or tax documents to make sure that the information is correct. We just trust that information because it came directly from the IRS. So if you have the option, for a couple reasons, I would say use it if you can, figure it out and you're comfortable with it, because it does prevent keying errors, and it also could prevent additional documentation being turned in later on down the road. The FAFSA will ask for 2020 income tax return information. So I would say it might be helpful to have your 2020 taxes out, with you when you start the FAFSA process, so that you'll be able to go through, if you can't use the IRS database retrieval, you'll be able to refer to which line they're actually asking for. You'll be able to refer to your tax return document and answer that question properly. If you do get stuck, again, reach out to us or attend one of your high school night presentations. Once you submit the FAFSA, you will get an email confirmation that the application has been submitted. So make sure that you, this is only if you put an email address on the FAFSA. So I would encourage that as well. Put an email address that you actually use, that you actually check, to make sure that once you submit it, keep an eye out for that confirmation email. So if you don't get it within, a day or two, I feel like they almost send it immediately. But if you don't get it within a day or two, I would say log back into your FAFSA and see if there's some sort of error or some sort of issue that you need to get resolved. One thing with the FAFSA, if you are putting your information in directly, if you're keying the information in, they do have like an auto check process. So if you, state that your adjusted gross income was 24,000, and then it asks you for taxes paid, and you put 24,000 in, you're going to get an error message that says, okay, usually this isn't the case. Usually if you make 24,000, you don't pay 24,000 in taxes. So could you please just double check your numbers? So they have things built like that into the FAFSA. And so just, know that that's out there. If you get an error message pop up or some sort of message pop up, just make sure you're reading it and fixing anything that it's asking you to fix. Here's our contact information. We are available through email, through telephone, and we are available in person. Our in-person assistance is through an office called Service EMU, and that is open in the Student Center. If you've been to campus at all, it's actually in the same building that the admissions office is housed in. So if you're going to admissions, like for a tour or anything like that, stop into Service EMU. If you have any financial aid questions, they're there to help you. You can also give us a call at 487-1048. That comes directly into our financial aid office. We have the advisors and other staff answering our phones, 8 to 5 every day, well, Monday through Friday. And then also our financial aid emails, usually emails, if you send them, if you send them in non-peak times, they get answered the day you send them, or within 24 hours. Right now, we're in a non-peak time. We've just kind of come off of that peak with school starting and all of the classes starting and all of that. So if you send an email to us, we should be able to respond to that within 24 hours. Bill, I'm going to ask if you can unmute yourself and see if there's any pattern that we have with questions being asked that we need to hit on, just to kind of make sure everyone knows the answers to them.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Steph. Yeah, we've had some great questions. We've had about, 30 or so. A lot of them are revolving around scholarships. A lot of whoever is chiming in with questions, they're great questions, by the way, are asking about scholarships. Can I apply for scholarships now? But I basically explained, and a lot of our advisors have to say, through the admissions process, that's when you're automatically considered for either an Emerald scholarship or potentially an education first scholarship. But the question was, a couple of the questions were, can I apply for scholarships now outside of like maybe the freshman scholarships?
Oh yeah, so I would absolutely, yes. So non-EMU scholarships. So and Connor, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce Connor earlier, but he's on the line too, also from admissions, and he can refer, or he can talk about the EMU scholarships. But there are, yes, you can start having your senior apply for scholarships right now. Anything that's out there, absolutely they can do that. Some places that they can look, go to the advising offices at their high school. A lot of times the counselors will get emails or they'll print out applications that they can have available to the students. There are scholarship search sites that students can log into. Mind you, they should be free search sites. You should not have to pay to join a scholarship site, and you should not have to pay to submit a scholarship application. All of that should be free. If you go to our website, like financial aid's website, emish.edu/finaid, FINAID, and go to our scholarships page, like up at the top or the side, depending on where what you're viewing it, whether it's from a desktop or a mobile. Go to the scholarships section, and we have some scholarship sites that are listed that are common search sites that students that we trust. But also, if you just Google scholarship search sites, like the most popular 7 or 5 will come up. If something doesn't seem right, reach out to us and we can verify if like, oh yeah, that's a legit site or that's not a legit site. But yes, students can start now. Those seniors start now. If you are involved in sports and your boosters organization is going to put out a scholarship for soccer or lacrosse or track or whatever, make sure you get that information and make sure you fill that application out or do whatever they're requesting. If you work at McDonald's, Kroger, see if your employer has a scholarship that's available to their employees. If your parents are working, see if their company has, like if they're part of the UAW, see if they have a scholarship program. Those are all places that you, the student, should be looking at now and figuring out what's available to you and your family, and make sure you know the deadlines and make sure you have everything in by the deadlines. So yes, you can start doing searches right now. Connor, is there anything that you want to add on the admissions standpoint, like with the university scholarships, how they go about, if there's, what that process is?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Connor. I'm one of the admissions advisors at the university. So Stephanie already alluded to one of the scholarships that we automatically consider students for, being the EFOS, and how important it is that the FAFSA is done simultaneously with that to make sure that we understand that you're receiving the Pell Grant. But we also consider students automatically for an Emerald Scholarship solely based off of their GPA when they apply. So there's no separate application they need to complete. Just by applying to the university, we make an admissions decision saying, yes, we can admit the student. And then, of course, offering them an Emerald Scholarship to get them excited. Not based around test scores, just GPA. Other things that are worth mentioning is the Presidential Scholarship. So that's a little bit different. It does require a separate application, and academically, you have to have a 3.5 GPA with a 25 on the ACT or a 1200 on the SAT. Or if your student has a 3.85 or higher, they do not need to submit a test score. With that comes an application to the Honors College and an essay. And from the students that apply with the essay, they will select students to bring back on campus for an interview day. And from there, they'll choose 20 students to receive a full ride. So all of tuition covered, all of room and board covered. We also have alumni scholarships. So for any student that has a parent or step parent or grandparent that graduated from Eastern, you can receive a one-time $1,500 scholarship. It does require an application to our alumni office with a 300-word essay, letter of recommendation, and a resume.
That's perfect. I totally forgot about the presidential and all those other ones too. And that's why Connor is here, because he of course would never forget about those. And again, the presidential, that is a full ride. So that's you're competing for a full ride academic scholarship, which is different than the EFOS, because the EFOS only covers between the Pell Grant and the EFOS, that covers your tuition portion. That is not considered a full ride because it's only covering tuition. So the presidential, if you are, if academically you're meeting those criteria, the 3.5 and the test score, definitely that's something that you should be looking into. I believe there's probably information about the presidential on the admissions website when it talks about freshman scholarships. So you can go to their website and find that information out. Bill, what else you got?
That was kind of like the big thing. It seemed like that seemed to be the trend with a lot of the questions. But I just want to kind of piggyback, just make sure that you guys are careful. Steph had mentioned like there are a lot of scholarship search engines out there and everything, but you want to be careful. Just make sure, there are a lot of predatory opportunities out there. Like you're going to be inundated with, as a going into college student, you're going to be getting lots of information, but just make sure that you're not paying for any scholarship opportunities. I just wanted to stress that just as like a public service announcement. You want to be, just to make sure, if something sounds too good to be true, you want to, keep that in mind. I did refer several of our students to like our scholarship search engine, but usually, that's for students who are continuing beyond their first year, a lot of those opportunities, but at any rate, yeah, you want to check with, check your Rotary Club in your community. Maybe go to your, your school board to see if, there are any opportunities available that way. So there are a lot of scholarships that are out there that are for the taking. It's just a lot of students don't have the, they don't know how to apply or don't have the courage to even apply. So just get out there, start searching, and just make sure that you're very careful with your personal identifiable information. But that's really kind of all that we had as far as trends, as far as the questions go.
Okay, and then there was one other thing that I wanted to add really quick of, things to kind of watch out for. We talked about federal aid programs. And the reason we kind of stress the federal aid programs is because they do tend to be a lower interest rate. They're not looking at your credit, the subsidized and unsubsidized are not looking at a credit score. They're, basically you fill out the FAFSA and your son or daughter is going to qualify for some sort of subsidized or unsubsidized loan. One thing that I noticed with when my son was a senior was that we started getting a lot of outside loan information in the mail, so from outside lenders, not from the federal government. If that's the route that you are choosing to go, that's okay if you want to do that. But just make sure that you're doing your research on that. Those are loans, like there's nothing bad with the companies that, most of the companies that are out there. But so they're called private loans. Private loans go through an outside lender, not the federal government. They do ask the school to certify the loans, and the money comes into the school. So it will pay the student's bill first, and then it would refund to the student if it overpays it. But if you're going to go the private loan route, absolutely, that's a fine route. Just make sure you're paying attention to the interest rate. Make sure that you're paying attention to the repayment schedules, and make sure that it's the best option for you. What I would recommend is, if you don't know which one you want to do, come into the financial aid office or give us a call, and we can talk about both of the processes. Generally, I would say if you want to do a private loan, fine, but I would also maybe have your son or daughter borrow the direct loan so that they have some of the cost. Private loan is going to be mostly in the student name, and they are going to require a cosigner on that. So, if you have questions about it, reach out. Even if if you decide to go somewhere else, not Eastern, reach out to that financial aid office. Of course, we hope you come to Eastern, but just make sure that if you have questions, reach out to a financial aid office somewhere so that you can get those questions answered. I know that there's still some questions coming in through the Q&A. I'm trying to think. You know what? We have some other parents on the line. Leanne, is there any hints or anything that you want to throw out? Leanne has a couple kids in college right now. I don't know if she's paying attention. Oh, she is. So is there anything
I was just waiting.
Yeah, is there anything you want to touch on to give any hints or things to be on the lookout for?
The only thing I can think of, and I do apologize if you might have already mentioned it, but while you're answering questions, it's hard to listen at the same time.
Yeah.
But when your students, so if Eastern, if they have other schools that they're considering, one thing I try to stress to families is whenever a student is offered a scholarship, because of course we can tell you about Eastern scholarships, but for your students that might be considering other schools as well, is ask questions like, is this a 4-year award? If they give you an institutional grant, that might be different from a scholarship. And so I always like to make sure parents and families are asking, okay, is this something that we can expect every year for 4 years? Is it going to depend on our FAFSA each year? But to just kind of know those things and be sure that they're asking sort of those questions. If there's anything that they need to do to renew their scholarships, some places will make, it's a scholarship that they've received from a donor. And so there's a requirement that you do a thank you letter in order to have that aid pay. And those are things that are a little bit further down the line than FAFSA, but just since we kind of got into a lot of those scholarship questions, I guess I just would throw that out there too, while we wait for these questions to get answered.
Yeah, no, those are good hints. So, yeah, I think that's really all that I wanted to go over, that we wanted to go over on the financial aid aspect. Now, again, I'm just going to remind you that this was just a really quick and dirty introduction to what the FAFSA is, why you want to fill it out, what you could be eligible for. Our next webinar that we have on tap, I think it's in December. We're going to go more in depth about your award letters, the types of aid that students are actually, eligible for, and what that means, what the process is. We just didn't want to overwhelm you with all of that information at one time. So this was just going to be a short, informative webinar. I guess, Connor, is there anything else that you want to add on the admissions side? If not, we can wrap it up. It looks like we don't have any more questions out there. Whoop, whoop.
There I am. Yeah, I think that is everything. I was actually just trying to pull up our sheet. We do have some other virtual events, but to plug anything is, with Eastern being one of your, top schools that your student is considering, definitely come take a campus tour. It is one of the best selling points to actually get to see the campus in action, talk to current students, get to meet my office, and also, get that kind of personalized attention to go over any other, last minute questions that you have as y'all navigate the search process. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Stephanie. You did an amazing job.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, if you haven't done the campus tour yet, I do strongly recommend that too. The campus has changed. If you as a parent went to Eastern, years ago, more than 5 years ago, the campus has changed so much that you'll probably enjoy the campus tour as well. So again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, give us a call, email us, stop by Service EMU. If you do a campus tour, stop by and just say hey to the ladies working and get a feel for, what your next steps are. Make sure you're on track with everything. And that is it. I know that we were scheduled to go to 7:30, but there was no way that I was going to be going until 7:30. If you have a question that we weren't able to get answered, please send us an email and we'll make sure that we answer that to you directly. Other than that, we are done. And I am going to stop the webinar. Have a good night, everyone. And hopefully you'll join us for our next financial aid presentation. And then again, check out admissions. Make sure you keep an eye out for admissions notifications on the other webinars that they also have available. So have a good night, everyone.